Coming up on Tech News Weekly, Jason Howell is out this week, but don't worry, I've got a great show for you. I talk, first of all, to Kaya Thomas about her recent article over on Debugger about Telepath, a social media network that wants to be the gentler, kinder Twitter. Then I talked to Dave Gershgorn of OneZero about his ALEXA knockoff that doesn't spy on him. It is a smart display that is whip smart, and I was pumped to get to chat with him about it. Before I round things out with a conversation about Apple's recent iPhone event, what was announced, what wasn't announced, and Dan Moren of Six Colors thoughts on 5G. It's all that and so much more coming up on Tech News Weekly. Tech News Weekly is brought to you from TWiT's LastPass Studios. You're focused on security, but are your employees? Well, LastPass can ensure that they are by making access and authentication seamless, whether employees are working in the office or remotely. Visit LastPass.com/TWiT to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 155, recorded Thursday, October 15th, 2020. This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Manscaped. Get the Manscaped Performance Package. It's the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Get 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com/twit. And by ITProTV. If you're looking to expand your IT career or improve the skills of your IT team, you need ITProTV. Visit itpro.tv/TNW for an additional 30% off all consumer subscriptions for the lifetime of your active subscription. Just use code TNW30 at checkout. And by MySudo. Life is better without spam, ads based on activity, hacked info, or the risk of identity theft. Take back control of your privacy with MySudo. Download the MySudo app today from the App Store or Google Play. Go to mysudo.com/twit to learn more. Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am Mikah Sargent. Jason Howell is out this week, but I am here and very excited to be helming the show with some great interviews I have planned for you. Our first one is about a change in social media. That's right. So, you know, a lot of times different sites will crop up and they will try to kind of take on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and Reddit and these different sites. And there's a new one out that so far seems to be so good. And I am excited to be joined today by Kaya Thomas to talk about Telepath. Welcome to the show, Kaya.
Thank you, Mike. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, so let us talk first. I think the best way to start is with a little bit of an explanation of kind of how you see Telepath and to give our listeners kind of a summary of what Telepath is and maybe what it's aiming to be.
Definitely. So how I view Telepath and my experience of being a user of it for the last week or so is that it's really trying to be a social platform focused on conversations. And so they're really honing in on deeply threaded conversations, long form or short form. So there's no character limits, just like, Twitter, we have our character limits, more short form conversation. They're really honing in on having natural flowing conversations of whatever type of length you want. And another thing they're really honing in on is the moderation aspect. So when you post, there are defined rules, essentially, that you need to be kind, you cannot threaten anyone based on their identity or who they are, and they're really taking a stance on moderation to try to create a platform that is more welcoming to marginalized communities and folks who are usually targeted online.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of been my experience as well, is that something felt a little bit, I don't know, just not fluffy. That's not the right word, because that implies that it's not. It was a little bit like I don't know, hanging out with an old teddy bear that you had as a kid a little bit. I felt safer there than maybe I have on some other social media networks. How would you say this kind of compares to the other newer social media platforms that are out there? There's Voice, there's for a while Mastodon was kind of a big one. There have been a few others. Do you think that this has legs, or do you feel comfortable kind of trying to decide that yet?
I think it has legs, right? When you look at something like Mastodon, I think it was mainly engineers that were on there. And I think one of the differences on Telepath that I've at least enjoyed and seen is that they've really gotten a diverse set of people from different industries on there. So it's not just techies and VCs, but there are professors, there's doctors, there's people from different industries having conversations together, which I think sets it apart, is that they're trying to make it more mainstream, where I think some of the other platforms are really just focusing in on the techies. Like Clubhouse is very tech and VC focused, and they haven't done a great job in terms of moderation. There's been a lot of hate on that platform. And so I think that there have been a lot of the social platform and networks that crop up that are either, hyped up for a minute and then they're gone. But it seems with Telepath, people are really having long conversations and enjoying and meeting people. And I've enjoyed being on there. And they've been in beta and private beta for a while. And I know that there have been people who have been on there for several months. So I do think it has legs.
For sure. And let's talk about that. So it is still in beta, correct? Folks can't go and just sign up and get right onto the platform. And then along with that, what is the sign up process like?
Yeah, so it is still in like the beta alpha stage. You can only be invited to the platform. So you can sign up on their website to be on the wait list, but you have to get an invite in order to join the platform. And when you sign up, you need a real phone number. So they're trying to prevent bots. Like there's tons of bots on Twitter, right? And so they're doing it so that you actually have to have like a phone carrier associated with the phone number that you give, so that they're trying to prevent bots that way. And then you have to also give your kind of real name or real identity, which some folks, there was a little bit of controversy over the real name part, because like Facebook takes a huge, big stance on this, right? Where sometimes you have to provide your identification. But I think Telepath is really, they're trying to not necessarily do it in the like government identity stance, but more so that they don't want anonymity. They want folks to be themselves on the platform. They want the person to be associated as a real person. So there are no brands or companies allowed to sign up. So you just are really representing yourself. And they want that so that folks can have real conversations, it seems.
Yeah, not only real conversations, but I also think it gives a level of you are representing yourself, and when you can't hide behind a fake account or one that doesn't have much information, folks just are less likely to want to do those kinds of attacks or be mean. Whenever you kind of have to be yourself there, you have to own up to the words that you have, which I find refreshing. One of the things that I've noticed about it is the way that it kind of seeks to give you different buckets into which you can pour your focus and your attention rather, and into which you can put content. And so in that way, the way that I was thinking about describing it was, it's as if Reddit and Twitter had a very good child, like they gave birth to the baby Jesus. Right now is how I feel about it, because it's, like I said, it's kinder, it's sweeter, and if Reddit and Twitter just had a normal baby, that would be a very horrible creature. But if somehow there was a miracle baby born from that, that's how I'm seeing Telepath right now. Do you like the sort of buckets? Because I posted the other day to hashtag dogs of Telepath, a photo of some photos of my dog, and kind of explained the story of his name. And it was really cool to see people who also care about dogs responding and, giving their thoughts. Do you think that sort of categorized way of sharing content is a good one?
I do. I think it's great because it allows you to kind of personalize your experience. So if you're not interested in conversations about a particular topic, you just don't join that network, right? And so I think being able to personalize the experience to say, hey, I want to have conversations about XYZ, and then joining those following networks, I think is a really smart idea just from a product standpoint as well, because then you really allow people to hone in on the stuff that they're interested in, and that's how people keep coming back, right? And I think the Twitter Reddit combination is a really good way to kind of describe it, because Twitter doesn't do it well, where you have a timeline just full of everything, and it's really hard to kind of curate that experience. But then Reddit, you have the different Reddit threads about the different conversations, but then it's just a bunch of anonymous trolls. So I think with Telepath is great because you get to have conversations with real people about real topics that you actually care about.
Now, this, of course, is early days. Have you run into any bugs, any issues in using the service? And kind of how quickly do you see the developers of Telepath iterating on that and attempting to improve the service? In other words, I'm curious if you feel like this is something that these creators are truly invested in improving, or if it's kind of one of those situations where we've made the thing, now we're moving on to the next thing.
Definitely not. I think the founders, from what I've seen, are super engaged on the platform, and the bugs that I've seen folks file and bugs I've come across myself, they usually respond and say, hey, we're working on this, or this is planned in the future. So they're very active. So it's definitely not like a one and done in which they made this thing and they're just kind of letting it out for the wild. They seem very engaged. The team seems very involved. They're always kind of posting, engaging in conversation, which is really nice because it seems like, okay, this is a team that really cares about this platform. I think it's really going to be interesting to see how they're able to scale, if they're able to scale, because they're doing all the moderation in-house. And since moderation is such an important part of the platform, we see that moderation is really hard to do at scale. And so I'm very curious to see how they plan to grow beyond the couple of thousand of people that are on there now, if they really want to be a social network, that is amassing thousands and thousands of users.
Definitely. Well, Kaya Thomas, I want to thank you so much for joining me today to talk about Telepath. If folks want to follow you on Telepath and maybe on other social media networks, where do they go to do that?
Thanks, Mikah. Yeah, if you want to follow me on Telepath, I got my first name, so I'm just at Kaya. And
Nice.
If you want to follow me on other platforms like Twitter, I'm at KThomas901.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mikah. Have a good one.
You as well. Well, coming up, folks, an Amazon Echo show that doesn't spy on you. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Manscaped. Mirror, mirror on the wall, what is the best brand for my, well, you get the rhyme. Manscaped, of course. Hold up. Is there something there in your nose? Good thing our partners at Manscaped are here to ensure you're taking care of your manhood and your nose hairs with its new performance package. Look, it's not just down there that needs a nice trimming and cleansing and taking care of. It also happens to be other parts of your face, like long nose hair or perhaps ear hair. And it is, of course, a kind of a complicated problem to get some scissors or something up in there. But Manscaped has you covered with the Manscaped Performance Package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Included in this package is the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, which is waterproof and uses a 9,000 RPM motor powered 360-degree rotary dual blade system. That's a lot of words that mean it does a good job of trimming those hairs. This nose and ear hair trimmer provides proprietary skin-safe technology, which helps prevent nicks, snags, and tugs in those delicate spots. Look, 79% of partners polled admitted that long nose hair is a major turnoff. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Why not use the best tools for the job here? This bundle includes the Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer, which of course is the best trimmer on the market for all parts of your body. And let's not forget its famous liquid formulations. There's the Crop Preserver Deodorant and Crop Reviver Toner that helps you maximize your hygiene routine. You can get the Performance Package now to receive Manscaped's 2 free gifts, the Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag. Also, you'll receive a replaceable blade every 3 months to keep your weed whacking and lawn mowing clean and enjoyable. The Performance Package is the best value that Manscaped has to offer. Thank you, Manscaped. I'm just, you know what, folks? I'm going to read this line and we're all going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to be great. Ready? Thank you, Manscaped, for making our holes look sexy. Get 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com/twit. That's 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com/twit. Manscaped.com/twit. What are you waiting for? Go whack your weeds. Manscaped, thank you for paying us to have me say that very uncomfortable sentence. I appreciate you, and I really do appreciate the tools that you provide. They are wonderful, and they do the job quite well. All right, folks, it is time to move on to our next topic. Amazon Prime Day just happened, and I can guarantee you that some of the best deals on Prime Day were those for Amazon's own products. The Echo Show, the Echo Dot, the Echo Dot with clock, the Echo Clock, the dancing bear, the this, that, the other. So a whole lot of people probably scooped up those products and are now in some ways becoming data collection devices for Amazon. But folks, there's a way to get the power and the functionality of much of what the Echo Show can provide without letting ALEXA spy on you. And we are joined today by Tech News Weekly fave Dave Gershgorn, who is here with us to talk about the tinkering he's been up to. Welcome back to the show, Dave.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm here in my robot lab.
I love it. I love it. All right. So you put out an excellent article over on Debugger. In fact, I think I saw a tweet at first, and you had talked about this device that you made. And I remember then later seeing the article, and I immediately went to Amazon and added the display to my save it for later cart so that I could buy this at some point. But let's talk about this. So tell me what you created, and then we'll kind of break into things because I'm curious about the, what caused you to want to create this thing. But first, let the listeners know what it is you created that you call an ALEXA knockoff that doesn't spy on you.
Totally. So what I made is basically a smart display. It is something that shows me my calendar, the weather, my the time, and then anything else that I kind of want to put on it. Kind of the functionality of an show, which is the one meant for the screen or the bedside table that has a little display and just shows you relevant stuff. So I wanted to recreate that show vibe, but I didn't want a microphone on it, and I didn't want I didn't really need the voice functionality of Alexa. I just wanted a display. And unfortunately, Amazon and Google are like the only ones that make these like smart displays, but they just happen to have their voice assistants in it, and I didn't really want a voice assistant. So so that's what kind of the impetus was. I know that you wanted to get to that a little later, but it's hard to explain what it does without like outlining the very specific things I wanted it to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. So essentially the display without the voice, which honestly, I do a show, Smart Tech Today, on Mondays here on the TWiT network. And my co-host is super into voice computing, but I joke, but it's also kind of true that I'm just too much of a control freak to be able to use voice computing and be happy with it, because there are things that I want to do that I can't have done the right way the first time if I'm using my voice to have it be done. And so I just like to have control over it. So with this, it's good that, you don't even involve that in the process. You kind of purpose built a device that does what you want it to do, and you kick out all the rest of it. So along with, showing your calendar, you said it can tell you the weather and some other information. I'm curious, did it start with you wanting just, okay, I want to make a thing that has my calendar, or did it start with you knowing about an online, what am I trying to say? Some code that was available that you could use, and then you thought, okay, how do I make this happen? So I'm kind of more curious if you went looking for the code after this idea came to you, or if you found the code and thought, okay, this is what I need to take this code and make it into a display.
Yeah, so the code definitely came second. The idea, I've always loved the idea of a smart mirror. And it just seemed like the most futuristic thing in the world to me, where you kind of like walk up to a mirror or any surface, and it has this like kind of personalized like readout of all of the stuff that you want to see. It's just so sci-fi and futuristic. And I've wanted to make one, but you need like a double-sided mirror and all of this like, it's a lot of work, and I've never like mustered up the emotional energy to like really do it. So this was like my like smart mirror light, and it actually uses smart mirror software. So it definitely came. The idea came first, and nothing on the market really did what I wanted. And I think that like it really taught me a really interesting lesson about technology, where a lot of the technology that is around today exists because other people thought it should. But thinking about exactly what I wanted from a device and realizing nothing was made in that niche kind of made me realize that like everything, all the technology that I have is because someone else said it was a good idea. Like, what are the things that I think is a good idea and I want to put around myself, you know what I mean? Surround myself with. Like the Windows operating system works the way it does because people at Microsoft think that that's the way an operating system should work. And obviously I can't build an operating system, but like applying this line of thinking about like putting your own needs and like how the device can serve you first, rather than just like buying whatever companies are selling, is like a really interesting way to think about what technology you either make or acquire. And it's kind of made me just start to make me think a little bit differently about, buying a gadget or versus seeing if I could make something that might do what I want a little bit easier.
Yeah, that purpose-built nature, I think, is what really drives home how great this is. And it's something that, that exact thing is something that I've realized recently. So, believe it or not, this can be applied to, I've learned how to crochet and then I've learned how to knit. Yeah. And in learning both of those skills and starting with patterns, once you start to understand how it works, you can sort of make adjustments and change things how you see fit to make a difference in the way that something is done. So while the cactus pattern was originally one way, I knew what stitches I needed to do to make slight adjustments to the horizontal or vertical nature of the cactus. And I think that when having that moment and going, I've got the power to make that change to make it work for me specifically. Yeah, that completely flips the script. And when you have something like, a phone where you were sort of trying to fit it into your life versus you getting to make something that fits perfectly for you, yeah, that does make all the difference. And I mean, it looks like, it fits right there on your desk along with your cat, which is nice as well.
Yes. The cats, it's just another cord for the cats to play with beyond kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's all a matter of how it kind of fits into your life. Yeah, my cat Scout, she insists that I pet her at like 3 o'clock every day. So in about half an hour, I'm just going to be inundated and be living in a scene much like the one you see on your screen.
That's amazing. So how much did this project cost you? Was it something that, and also as you were going through, was it like, oh, this is suddenly costing me more than I expected, or, oh, this is about what I expected in terms of pricing?
It was a little more expensive than I thought it was going to be. The total cost was about $180, which is like, I say it out loud, I'm like, that is insane. But there is more functionality that I forgot to mention at the beginning, because one of the expenses was a $40 SD card, which had 256 gigs of storage. So what I did was I also set this up. It's also like SD card technology is insane. The thing is like the size of my pinky now, and it's 256 gigs. That's like a whole different story. But it also serves as a local storage container on my network. So I can store files and transfer them between my PC and my laptop and my iPad and my phone. And I can stream movies off of it through Plex to kind of like anywhere in the world. So it's also, and like the power of using a general purpose, kind of like Raspberry Pi 4, which contributed to the cost. It's the 4 gigabyte model, which means it has 4 gigabytes of RAM, means that I can use it for a whole bunch of different things. I can stream from it. I can use it as my primary computer if I really wanted to. It would be a little slow, but you could do it. So it's really about building a flexible platform that you can use to tinker in the future as well. I think that's kind of like the core strength of this project. While it's like $180 of investment to get a touch screen and to get the Raspberry Pi and to get the big storage, it's like kind of like the end game tiny tinkering computer build, right? It's like everything that I'll need in the future. So you could definitely do it cheaper though. Like $180 is not like the cost to get in. You can do this on a Raspberry Pi 3. You could do it on a Raspberry Pi Zero. Those are like $30. And the Raspberry Pi Zero W is like $10, I think. And that has Wi-Fi and everything that you need. You can't do as much in terms of like streaming from those, but you might be able to get one stream off of it. And you can get a cheaper display, or you can repurpose a display or buy one on Facebook Marketplace and recycle a display, and like really cut down your costs there. You can use a generic USB-C or USB micro cord, so you wouldn't have to spend $10 on a cord with a switch on it. You can, cut costs in so many ways, and you might be able to just build this with stuff you have around your house if you have the computer and everything like that. So I think that it's like a very attainable project, and like making something static like a Magic Mirror display is like a really easy starting point. You start doing a little code, the assembly is like pretty minimal, and it gives you, like I said, this platform for you to do a whole bunch of new other stuff on.
Cool. Well, like I said, I was certainly inspired to want to create something like this. It's funny because the onus of this, I think, is the same for me. I can remember seeing a YouTube video at some point where someone had created a Magic Mirror display, and that idea of I walk into the bathroom in the morning and it says, "Hello, Mikah," and then it has my calendar for the day and the weather and all that kind of stuff on it. That is so futuristic and so cool, and I want it. And so I'm with you there too, because I remember looking at the project and it's like, oh my God, I've got to get out the soldering iron. I've got to start, taking mirrors apart and doing all this other stuff. And look at all that wiring I've got to do. That seems involved. So I never have gotten around to it. But it's kind of nice to see that with less effort, still some level of effort, but less effort, you can sort of get 3/4 of the way there. And then, I mean, I assume you could take this and put it into a mirror, right? If you ended up going all the way with it, would the display that you have right now be able to become a Magic Mirror? Yeah,
totally. So you would lose out the touchscreen aspect of it, obviously, because it would be behind that mirror. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, no, there's no way it would work. But you could just pop it behind a mirror and the two-way mirror thing, and it would be perfectly functional. So it's also kind of extensible to that as well. But one day we'll have the gumption to do it. But today is not that day. So today we make this thing.
Excellent. Well, Dave, I want to thank you so much for joining us or joining me again today. And I know you've got to get off for petting the cat and everything like that. But if folks want to follow you online, where do they go to do that?
So you can find me on Medium, where we have a number of technology sites. The one that you can check out most related to this is debugger.medium.com. It's our new consumer tech and gadget blog. That's very, very good. And I implore everyone to go to debugger.medium.com.
Excellent. Head there now. And thank you, Dave Gershgorn, for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Alrighty, folks, coming up, what was and wasn't announced at Apple's October iPhone event. But first, this week's episode of Tech News Weekly, it's brought to you by ITProTV. If you're interested in an IT career but aren't sure where to start, ITProTV is your one-stop shop. ITProTV is the best online IT education platform where you can learn about IT for every kind of field. There's government, managed services, healthcare, education, finance, insurance IT, and more. One of the best things about ITProTV is the fact that it makes learning IT fun and entertaining, so you'll easily retain all the knowledge you'll apply in real life on the job. They have over 5,800 hours of IT training and 375 combined certifications, so you know you're getting the best IT education around. If you're a manager looking to develop the skills of your IT team, ITProTV is just as valuable to you. They have every vendor and skill you need for your IT team training and are the only official video training partner for CompTIA. Microsoft IT training, Cisco training, Linux training, Apple training, Security Cloud, and more. You can track your team's results, prove the ROI of your training spend with the Pro Portal, manage your seats, assign and unassigned team members, and access monthly usage reports. See metrics like logins, viewing time, courses viewed, tracks completed, and more. Plus, easily manage your team. You can manage subsets of users or teams by providing them with customized assignments, monitoring progress, and reporting on usage of the platform. Assignments can be full courses and or individual episodes within courses. Also, you can check out the podcast TechNado with Don Pizzette, featuring industry guests and IT news recaps for a deeper dive into the IT realm. And by the way, October, that's this month, is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and ITProTV has hundreds of hours of cybersecurity training. It's a great time to start a career in the industry with ITProTV. Whether you're looking to dive into a new IT field or you're expanding the skills of your IT team, ITProTV is exactly what you need. Go to itpro.tv/TNW and use code TNW30 to receive 30% off all consumer subscriptions. That's itpro.tv/TNW and use the code TNW30 for an additional 30% off for the lifetime of your active subscription. ITProTV. Build or expand your IT career and enjoy the journey. Our thanks to ITProTV for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. Folks, Apple held an October event at which it announced iPhones and iPhones and iPhones and iPhones. And 5G brought to you by Verizon. This was the event that I think many of us had been waiting for. Typically, Apple announces its iPhones in September. And things took a little bit of a turn this time, and we got them in October. But the iPhone wasn't the only product that was announced, and I am excited to be joined by my good pal and co-host on Clockwise, Dan Moren of Six Colors, to talk about the Apple event. Welcome back to the show, Dan.
Great to be here, Mikah. Thanks. There was an event this week. I must have missed it.
No, but you're here for that. We need you.
All right. No, that's right. I saw it.
Oh, good. All right. So let's talk about this. First things first, we have new iPhones. And how many iPhones did Apple announce at this event?
Oh, it seems like 6 billion, but it was only 4. It was just 4. And you could be forgiven for thinking that there were fewer than 4 because 2 of them are like basically the exact same size. They just differ in features because you can make like one of those old school. You remember the original 2x2 product matrix that Steve Jobs did when he came back? Like we've got the iBook and the iMac and the PowerBook and the Power Mac. Kind of feels a little bit like that. You got the iPhone 12 mini, the iPhone 12, the iPhone 12 Pro, the iPhone 12 Pro Max. I must have missed up some words in there somewhere.
There are 4 different types of phones with all sorts of colors and all different kinds of cameras. This is the first year in a while. Well, maybe not in a while, but this is a change from last year in that depending on how big the phone is, the better the camera system. So it used to be that the 12 Pro and the 12 Pro Max both had the same camera system. But as of iPhone 12, that has shifted. Can you kind of talk about what people are getting or giving up depending on what model they get? So starting at the iPhone 12 Mini, and then going to the iPhone 12, iPhone 12 Pro, and iPhone 12 Pro Max. What are we getting at different levels?
Yeah, I think it's helpful to think about this a little bit like there's essentially 2 lines of phones. And one is the iPhone 12 Mini and the iPhone 12, which are actually pretty similar. And when it comes to the camera, I think they're almost exactly, if not exactly the same on the camera size, those two, which is to say very similar to what the iPhone 11 offered this year. There are 2 lenses. There's your wide lens, which is a redone lens this year. Apple has upgraded that. I think it's a 1.6 f-stop plus some additional elements within the lens to increase picture quality. So that's on one side. You've got those 2 lenses, the wide and the ultra wide. If you bump it to the Pro line, and let's take the iPhone 12 Pro and the iPhone 12 Pro Max as, again, sort of the same line, they add the additional telephoto lens as well as some additional computational heft. So, for example, Apple talked a little bit about this new Pro RAW feature that gives the power of shooting in RAW, but with the convenience of using your phone, as well as some additional features unlocked by this lens system. Now, there's an asterisk in there. Because the Pro Max, as you alluded to, has some additional stuff on top of that. Among other things, it has a slightly better optical zoom. It goes to 2.5x instead of just 2x. And it also, I believe, is the only one that has a larger sensor that's built in for the camera. So this is again, as you said, a point where this is a differentiation in terms of size and in terms of the camera system. And both Pro ones also have this LiDAR scanner that we saw debut on the iPad Pro earlier this year, which Apple is talking about in terms of providing faster autofocus in low light conditions, as well as the ability to do like portrait mode at night with that lower light situation as well.
So I guess one of the best ways for the average person who's watching this show for the latest news to kind of think about these phones is kind of where each of them fit in terms of the consumer who might be interested in them. So obviously at the high level, the iPhone 12 Pro Max, there's kind of like 2 groups, maybe 3 groups that one makes sense for. The person who wants the best, biggest, best, biggest, best. The person who will actually be using that phone. It's got what Dolby Vision HDR, video, Dolby Vision, and I mean, so the Pro who actually will make use of that, and I forgot what the third group was. Oh, people like you and I who aren't just in it to get the best, biggest, best, biggest, but need to be able to talk about that kind of, what is offered at that level versus what is not. But let's talk about kind of on the other side of things. So iPhone 12 Mini and the normal iPhone 12 and then the iPhone 12 normal Pro, kind of, do you think that consumers what's the reason to go for a mini, and what's the reason to go for just a regular iPhone 12?
I think the best way to think about it, I already had friends asking me about which iPhone should I get? And I think what's helpful again to think about here is what do you care about? What's your primary metric? Are you very price conscious? Are you very size conscious, whether that's a small size or a large size? Are cameras really important to you? I think those sorts of questions can help you narrow down which ones you want. Now, the Mini, I think, is especially appealing to the people who have felt like all of the phones are too big now, right? It seems like phones have tended more and more towards that larger screen size, and thus, something that is harder to deal with in one hand in a lot of cases. Or for people who get frustrated, it's like, oh, my phone's too big, doesn't fit in my pocket. That's annoying. I think the 12 Mini is a really, really attractive product at that point because it's not a lot of sacrifices when it comes to the features, and it lets you have that smaller form factor, which Apple has experimented before in the past with this with the iPhone SE, doing that a couple times. I think the iPhone 12 by comparison I think that's sort of the baseline. I think that's the phone that's probably best for most people. Again, it hits that sweet spot of having a nice big display. It is, a little bit cheaper than the Pro line, but it still gets you most of the features that you'll find in the Pro line, with the exception of a lot of those camera features we discussed before. But it's not that it's not a good camera, right? It's just that those higher models have even more so. So I think that's where the iPhone 12 Mini and the iPhone 12 Pro come down. Or sorry, the iPhone 12, just nothing. iPhone, I don't know what you call it, just the iPhone 12. The iPhone 12 Pro, by comparison, is for those people who, perhaps like me and others, want the extra cameras and the extra features in the Pro line, but don't want to deal with a phone that is so large that it can be sometimes unwieldy.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So one of the things that was announced that was a little bit, I think, last minute knowledge heading into the event was the introduction of MagSafe to the MagSafe brand kind of came back. So many of you probably know MagSafe as the technology used in MacBook charging of years past, where the little charger was a proprietary connector and it would magnet onto the side. And people loved that, and they lamented it when it was gone from the MacBook Pro because, you trip over it or you have a pet trip over it and the cord would easily disconnect. But now someone trips over the USB-C cord and sometimes it pulls the MacBook Pro onto the floor. That's no fun. With the reintroduction of MagSafe, this is a whole new kind of thing where you've got a bunch of different accessories that Apple is working with, but of course, this is going to be huge for third-party manufacturers who are going to make accessories for the iPhone. Because of this technology, this magnetic technology, it helps with charging. They can do a little bit more charging because of the alignment. So things will be perfectly placed where it needs to be to provide the best charge for the device. But this was a little bit of a surprise, and it's something that they've introduced in all the technology and all of the phones. And I'm curious kind of your take on this in general. And if you think this is going to introduce any level of confusion for folks who already have Qi chargers, because I'm sure that, at least for me, even I had this moment of, wait, does that mean that my Qi chargers that I already have aren't going to work anymore? So if you want to explain that to the listeners.
Yeah, the good news is your Qi chargers will continue to work just fine. Apple says this is backwards compatible with the Qi chargers. Really what the magnets are there for is to enable, like you said, this extra degree of peace of mind, and more than anything in a lot of cases. I mean, I think I told you this week as we recorded Clockwise that just that morning I had picked up my phone and realized that it had failed to charge overnight on my wireless charging pad because it wasn't lined up correctly, or at some point it got knocked off alignment. And that's frustrating because if you do it, like me, I have a stand next to my bed when I'm sleeping, and maybe sometimes I, reach over the night and pick it up and I don't put it down quite right. So that's frustrating. So the MagSafe is there to make sure that you align it correctly and that your phone gets charged, that you have that, knowledge that it is in fact working correctly. It's a little bit like a supersized version of the Apple Watch charger, in that you can kind of just clip it on the back. But it's still, other than the ability to provide slightly faster charging, it doesn't necessarily change much about the process itself. It seems like that's all still basically built on top of the Qi charging. But what it does open up is, as you said, all these opportunities for third-party manufacturers who want to build stuff that works and clips onto the back of the iPhone. So, for example, we've already seen Belkin, I think, has a charging stand that they've announced. They also have a car mount that I was actually looking at that goes in your car vents, and you can just sort of slap your phone on. And we've seen magnetic versions of that before, but because they weren't always designed to work correctly with the iPhone or required you to add like a metal plate or something to the back so that it actually works, this should make that process a lot more seamless, a lot easier. And just the ability to add on magnetic third-party attachments. So Apple showed off a leather wallet you could slap on the back. I've already heard people talking about like whether or not PopSocket might offer a magnetic version that clips onto the back, which obviously a lot of people would be very excited about. And in some cases, potentially even removes the idea that you need a case, right, like to work as an intermediary between those two things. So I think it's a clever addition, and it probably also has the benefit, depending on how strong the magnets are, is if you trip over your charging cable, maybe your phone doesn't go flying.
Yes, indeed. All right, we are going to take a quick break, folks, and we'll be back with Dan for more about the Apple event, because there was more that was announced there. But first, I do want to tell you about MySudo. Everything you do online increases your digital exhaust. Look, it's just going everywhere. It's spreading your personal information across the digital world, like your name, your phone number, your email address, your credit card numbers, your billing and shipping address, your browsing activity. I could barely get all of it into one sentence. This highly sensitive information identifies you and your private activities, leaving you vulnerable to spam, to scams, and worse. You want privacy for your daily digital activities, and that's why you need MySudo. With MySudo, you can quickly create different profiles called pseudos. Each one can have a working phone number, email, virtual card, and private browser. You give your pseudo profile a purpose, like shopping, like selling, or online services, and now every time you talk, you text, you email, you browse, or you pay, you can use your pseudo profile and finally take back control of the information you share. You know you're secure with MySudo because there are no login or credentials. MySudo does not require security-prone login or password requests. Instead, a private key is created that only the user has access to securely on their devices. There's an encrypted cloud. All metadata that's stored on MySudo's cloud is encrypted. No one, not even MySudo, can read any user's communications. Only the user holds the unique encryption key. And they have end-to-end encrypted communications. All your communications with other MySudo users for messaging, for voice, for video, and email are always encrypted, and only you have access to your data. This, of course, was first brought to our network by way of iOS Today when Leo mentioned he was using MySudo during the AppCap segment. I quickly got it after that because I thought, oh, this is so cool. There's so many different places where I'd like to have a private way of messaging that sticks to that specific box. And shortly after that, they reached out and said, hey, we want to support the network. And so we're super happy to have them here. So you can, of course, trust that MySudo is the world's only all-in-one privacy solution. MySudo has 3 subscription plans. All plans come with unlimited encrypted communications between MySudo users for messaging, voice, video, and email. Each subscription plan comes with a working pseudo profile, phone number, email address, and more. Depending on the privacy protection you want, there are Pseudo Go, Pseudo Pro, and Pseudo Max plans available with increased privacy options at each tier. MySudo takes protection of your data seriously. When you download the app, they don't ask for an email address or password or your contacts to create an account. You can quickly access and utilize various privacy tools. MySudo is the only all-in-one privacy app empowering users to take back and control their personal information. Whether you've been hacked, tracked, had identity theft, or scammed, spammed, or just want to prevent these from happening, the MySudo app will mitigate the common risks that we all face today. Download the MySudo app today from the App Store or Google Play. Go to mysudo.com/twit to learn more. Take back and control your personal information with the MySudo app and download it today. Thanks so much, MySudo, for being awesome and for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, so we've got the iPhone 12 Pro and the iPhone 12 as well as the MagSafe figured out, but that leaves a certain minuscule product. And I don't know why I've suddenly taken on an accent, but apparently it is appropriate for this. There's also a reintroduction in a smaller package of the HomePod Mini, and the Apple event actually started with this. So tell me about this new product from Apple, Dan.
Well, if you thought the original HomePod was too big and too expensive, the HomePod Mini is here to assuage you on both counts. It comes in at about 3.3 inches, which is roughly half the size of the full-size HomePod. And more importantly, and I think what's a bold move from Apple, is just at $99, which is considerably cheaper than the $299 that the original HomePod went for. A lot of people have been talking about whether or not this was the HomePod that Apple should have shipped in the first place. I think there's a strong argument for that. I think the big question will be when we actually get our hands on it, how does it sound and whether it can compete? Obviously, it won't be able to sound as good as a HomePod, one would think, just due to the restrictions and the smaller speakers and things like that. But if it's still, a good percentage of, if it's 2/3 to 75% of your way to a HomePod for a third of the price, that certainly seems like a pretty good deal. In addition, I've looked around to try and find AirPlay speakers before because I wanted to put speakers in different parts of my house and have the ability to just play music from my phone on any of them. And there are relatively few at that price point. The only one I can think of is IKEA has a team up with Sonos that also supports AirPlay 2, and they sell a $99 bookshelf speaker. And it's pretty good. I have one of those. But getting one that works not only with AirPlay, but is also a smart speaker is obviously, a huge improvement as well. So that's the sort of the big takeaway from this is let's try, I think, for Apple to get more of these out there, more of them on shelves everywhere, and to try and get more and more people to buy them, because it seems like the original HomePod did not do particularly well in that regard.
Yeah, that's kind of the big thing there is they didn't get as many out. And it's interesting where they are focusing the attention of the HomePod this time. If you go to Apple's main page and you scroll all the way down to where the HomePod Mini is, it says room-filling sound and an intelligent assistant. Wow, I cannot say this. An intelligent assistant powered by Siri and smart home control. That has been one of the biggest complaints I think about the HomePod is that it was not so focused on being a smart speaker as the other big companies were making. And now Apple is making it clear that this is what we want this to be. Right. And so you've got this small little device that can control all of your smart home stuff and then also work as a way for you to contact and communicate with Siri. Do you think that the demos that they gave sort of hold up to this? Are they putting their money where their mouth is in terms of that functionality, or do you still feel like this is mostly meant to be a good sounding Apple Music streaming device?
Yeah, it certainly sounds like they were focusing much more on Siri and voice assistant as part of the story here. It really seemed like an afterthought with the original HomePod, where it's like, we built this amazing, great sounding speaker. It also has Siri. You can do some Siri stuff with it, whatever. But I think that this time around, they've realized that is kind of the niche that they're trying to fill here is really about voice assistants and about smart home devices, not necessarily just about great sounding music. Now, that said, I think what the challenge is a lot of the features that they showed off during this presentation, and the new ones there were things like sort of like a daily briefing style feature, as well as the intercom feature. The Amazon Echo has had those features for a long time. I mean, including the briefing feature, I think has been around since the first Echo. So catching up on that now still feels like a little bit like Apple is just running behind what its competitors are doing. I think Siri as a voice assistant overall has tended to come up shorter when it is compared to things like, the Echo voice assistant, Google's voice assistant, trying not to name any names here for people. And I think that, what would be a much bigger signal was if Apple were to come out and say, like, we've really enhanced Siri with all these new features, and we've really taken a hard look at how the voice assistant works, and that's what we're focusing on here. But they didn't do so much of that, as much as they talked about like things that you can already do with Siri. And I think it's certainly a compelling part of the argument, but I think a lot of people who have already bought into an ecosystem, whether it's Amazon or Google's, are going to not have the biggest reason to switch here.
That makes sense. Well, I've one last topic that I wanted to ask you about, and then we'll say goodbye. 5G by Verizon. What are your thoughts on 5G? Because if folks tuned into Leo and my live coverage of the event, you'll know that we both were kind of annoyed with how much 5G, and in parentheses by Verizon, was brought up, given the fact that true millimeter wave 5G is not available in many places, and oftentimes you have to be very close to it. Do you think that 5G is a true selling point of these phones, or is kind of a promise for an eventual future?
Did they talk about 5G? I can hardly remember. I think that 5G, it's a checkbox right now. That they're ticking the checkbox and saying, look, we've got 5G support, because they know that if they don't, everybody on the internet is going to be complaining about the fact that the Apple came out with a new iPhone doesn't support 5G. But at the same time, you're totally right. The network just isn't there right now, despite Verizon's assurances. It's not built out to the point where most people are going to see a huge impact from this. The millimeter wave, as you said, is the big new technology here, but it is very localized and limited, and it really is not in a lot of places right now. So I think 5G will not make a big difference for most users. One of the other things that it promises is, the ability to help with things like network congestion in crowded areas being a thing that we're not really supposed to do right now. So that's not particularly attractive either. The amount of time they spent talking about it was pretty disproportionate to the ultimate impact I think it's going to have for most people. And Apple seemed kind of to have a, almost like a spiel that was written a year ago, and they didn't really change at all for the current world environment as far as that goes. So to me, it's a bullet point, but it's just not something that's really going to help anybody right now.
Agreed, frankly. Dan Moren, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. It was delightful to have you back on the show, and I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I always appreciate it.
Alrighty, folks, that is going to do it for us this week. We have reached the end of another episode of Tech News Weekly. Of course, the show publishes every Thursday at twit.tv/TNW. You just head there if you want to subscribe to the show in all of the formats, both audio and video. You just click subscribe in audio or subscribe in video, and we've got links to the different places: Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Verizon 5G podcasts, all those sorts of things. We are in those places, and we do appreciate you doing so. You can also follow us on social media. We are at TWiT on Twitter, at twit.tv on Instagram, at TwitTalk on TikTok. And if you want to send tweets to me or follow me on Telegram or Voice or any of the other social media networks, I'm almost always at Mikah Sargent on all of those things. Check out twit.tv/HOI. That's hands on iOS. I'll have an episode out later today that may solve the issues you've had if you've, since updating your iPhone, have had trouble connecting to your Chromecast, your Roku, any of your local network stuff, have trouble connecting to your Philips Hue lights, etc. There's one setting you need to be paying attention to, and I answer your question in this episode. Of course, you should also follow Jason Howell. He's at Jason Howell on Twitter, and does twit.tv/HOA. That's hands on Android. So check out the episode that would have published today. And of course, Jason will be back next week. We can't wait for him to return. Thanks so much to John, Ashley in the studio for rocking it out on this show, on both of our hands-on shows, and for just being an all-around awesome guy, as well as Burke and John and whomever else might be there helping us keep things rolling along. And of course, we will see you next time on Tech News Weekly. Goodbye. This is normally where there'd be a 2-up, but there's only one of me.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am ITProTV, host at TWiT TV. Got a question for you. Have you gotten tired of how bad your photos are looking every time you post them to Instagram? Better yet, have you gotten yourself a new camera and you can't quite figure out why the images just don't look that good? Well, I have a solution for you. It's my show, Hands On Photography. Each and every Thursday, I sit down and share different tips and tricks that are going to help make you a better photographer and a better post processor. So subscribe today at twit.tv/hop to learn more.